Quebec City sits at roughly 46.8 degrees north in the province of Quebec, where the St. Lawrence River narrows dramatically and the Canadian Shield begins pressing in from the north. It is the provincial capital, positioned about 250 kilometers northeast of Montreal along the river corridor. The city proper holds around 574,000 residents, with the greater metro area reaching approximately 839,000. That makes it the 12th largest city in Canada and the 7th largest metropolitan area, while ranking second within Quebec behind Montreal. It is a mid-sized capital with the cultural weight of something considerably larger. The climate is humid, continental. Summers run warm and genuinely pleasant. Winters are cold and snowy, with temperatures regularly falling below -15 degrees Celsius, or about 5 degrees Fahrenheit. And the shoulder seasons in May and September offer some of the most agreeable conditions for walking the city. The winters are not a deterrent for everyone. Quebec City has built a legitimate winter tourism economy around the cold rather than despite it. The city suits a specific kind of traveler well. History enthusiasts, architecture readers, francophone culture seekers, and food-focused visitors tend to get the most from it. It supports weekend breaks, longer cultural itineraries, and shoulder season escapes with equal competence. The honest case for visiting rests on a single fact that no other city in North America can match. Quebec City is the only remaining walled city north of Mexico, and it reads more visibly European than anywhere else on the continent. That is not marketing language. The fortifications, the clifftop Chateau Frontenac, the narrow upper town streets, and the language on every sign are structural and cultural realities that set it apart from any peer destination. The weaknesses deserve equal honesty. English fluency outside tourist zones is noticeably lower here than in Montreal, and attempting French, even imperfectly, is both appreciated and practically useful. Winter temperatures are genuinely harsh and require proper preparation, not just a warm jacket. And the most photographed parts of the Old City, particularly in July and August, carry visible tourist saturation that can work against the atmosphere visitors came to find. The metro area spreads across a range of distinct districts. La Cité Limoilou anchors the urban core alongside the historic areas. Beauport, Charlesbourg, Cap Rouge, and the Montmorency corridor each carry their own character. Each of those neighborhoods gets detailed coverage in later sections. Getting to Quebec City almost always means flying into Jean Lesage International Airport, code YQB, which sits about 15 to 20 minutes west of Old Quebec, depending on traffic. It is a regional hub, so direct flights from major U.S. cities exist, but are not always plentiful. Round-trip fares from large American hubs typically run anywhere from around $133 on the low end to over $860 at peak, with most searches landing somewhere in the $400 to $500 range as of this recording. Positioning your travel dates outside of summer peak and major festival windows tends to pull that number down considerably. From the airport, a taxi or Uber is the practical choice. The metered taxi ride to the Old Quebec area runs around $40, and Uber is widely available and often comes in slightly below that. The trip itself is straightforward, roughly 20 minutes under normal conditions. There is no metro system in Quebec City at all, so do not plan around one. Once you are in the city, the Old Quebec area rewards walking almost entirely. The walled upper town and the lower town below it are compact by design, and most of what draws visitors is within a reasonable walking distance. The funicular connecting the two levels handles the vertical drop between them. The broader city, including Sainte-Foy and the suburban corridors, requires either bus or a car to navigate comfortably. The city bus network carries a good reputation for coverage. A single ride runs $3.70 as of this recording, and a day pass comes in around $10.25. If you are spending most of your time in the historic core, you may find the bus largely unnecessary. A car becomes useful if you plan to reach the Montmorency Falls area, Côte de Beaupré, or the Charlevoix region further east. For shorter rides across the city, taxis start at $3.45 with a $1.80 per kilometer rate. Uber operates here as well and gives you a fair estimate up front, which makes budgeting simpler. For getting across the St. Lawrence River, a ferry connects Quebec City to Lévis on the south shore. Verify current fares before boarding, as the operator sets those independently. Intercity connections are solid. VIA Rail serves Quebec City through 2 stations. Gare du Palais sits in the lower town and is walkable for visitors already based in Old Quebec. Gare de Sainte-Foy serves the western end of the city. All trains call at both. Several inner-city bus carriers also serve Quebec City, with Gare du Palais functioning as a combined rail and bus terminal for many routes. For navigation throughout, Google Maps handles the city reliably and recognizes French street names without issue. Accommodation in Quebec City divides into 3 practical zones, and choosing the right one shapes the entire trip. Hotel inventory in and around Old Quebec runs lighter than you'd expect for a major tourist destination, with the most highly rated options concentrated within or near the walls. Demand spikes hard during summer and around Carnival, when the gap between planning ahead and scrambling is measured in hundreds of dollars per night. Upper Town, inside the old walls, holds the highest concentration of hotels and puts you within walking distance of the Citadel, the Plains of Abraham, and the Chateau Frontenac. Budget options here are rare. As of this recording, budget tier nights run around $83, while mid-range properties average around $205.50 per night. That pricing reflects the location. You are essentially sleeping inside a UNESCO-recognized fortified city with few real competitors for the address. The upside of Upper Town is straightforward. Every major historic attraction is walkable, and you lose no time or energy to transit. The downside becomes clear in July and August, when the same streets that feel cinematic in the shoulder season turn into crowded corridors with audible foot traffic and summer festival noise late into the evening. Travelers sensitive to that trade-off may want to look elsewhere. Lower Town, centered on the Petit Champlain quarter at the base of the cliff below the walls, offers a noticeably different character. The streets are narrower, the scale is more intimate, and the restaurant density along the waterfront and through the Quartier Petit Champlain shopping district is high. Noise levels at night tend to be lower than in Upper Town, simply because the area draws fewer late-night crowds. The practical catch is geography. Getting back up to Upper Town requires either the funicular, which has its own schedule and fares to verify, or a climb up the steep Cap Diamant staircase. For travelers with mobility considerations, that logistics point is worth thinking through before booking. La Cité Limoilou sits just outside the old walls and runs more residential in character than either of the heritage zones. Pricing tends to come in below the intramuros options. Transit access to the historic core is workable, and the neighborhood has its own local dining scene along Rue Saint-Joseph. It lacks the atmospheric density of Upper Town or Petit Champlain, but for travelers who treat the hotel as a place to sleep rather than part of the experience, it is a reasonable and more affordable base. Farther out, neighborhoods like Beauport, Charlesbourg, Cap Rouge, and La Haute-Saint-Charles are primarily chain hotel corridors built around commercial strips. Nightly rates are lower, but without a rental car, getting to the Old City adds real friction to every day. One exception worth noting: travelers whose itinerary centers on Montmorency Falls or the Aquarium of Quebec will find Beauport area properties genuinely convenient for those specific sites, since both attractions sit well outside the walkable, historic core anyway. On timing, advance booking is not optional for July, August, or the Winter Carnival in February. Demand concentrates on a small slate of well-rated options in and around the Old City, so popular hotels fill early, and nightly rates climb sharply as availability narrows. Booking 2 to 3 months out for peak periods is a reasonable floor, not a cautious overreaction. The bottom line across all three zones: Upper Town wins on convenience, Lower Town wins on atmosphere, and the outer neighborhoods win only on price. Quebec City's primary identity as a travel destination is architectural and historical in a way that very few cities in North America can match. The entire Old City sits behind intact 18th century fortification walls, and walking those walls costs nothing. They function as a free orientation circuit that gives you elevated sightlines over both Upper Town and the St. Lawrence in a single loop. No other city on the continent offers that specific combination. The Citadel of Quebec anchors the southern end of the walls and earns its time. It is an active military base for the Royal 22e Regiment, the only exclusively French-speaking regular infantry regiment in the Canadian Army, and it doubles as the official Quebec City residence of the Governor-General and the King. Guided tours run from 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. daily. Adult admission is $22, seniors $20, children $6, and children under 10 enter free. Budget 90 minutes. And if you time it for a summer morning, the changing of the guard ceremony adds context that the museum exhibits alone cannot. Directly adjacent to Upper Town, the Plains of Abraham functions as a large urban park built on one of the most consequential pieces of ground in Canadian history. The 1759 battle, fought here, ended French colonial rule over New France and reoriented the entire continent's political future. Walking the park is free and open around the clock. The Battlefield Museum inside the park charges admission, so verify current rates at the operator's site before visiting. Morning and late afternoon are the most useful times. Tour groups thin out, and the light across the river is considerably better. Quartier Petit Champlain sits at the base of the cliff below Upper Town and is generally cited as one of the oldest commercial districts in North America, dating to the French colonial era. The streets are narrow and walkable, with independent boutiques, galleries, and restaurants clustered together. Entry is free. You reach it either by the historic funicular from Upper Town, which charges a modest fare, or by the stairs. Shoulder season visits in May or October are noticeably quieter than July, when this neighborhood absorbs a significant share of the city's peak tourism volume. The Fairmont Le Chateau Frontenac needs no introduction, but does merit a ground-level visit even for non-guests. Built in 1893 in chateau-esque style, it served as an Allied war conference site in 1943 and 1944 and is consistently described as one of the most photographed hotels in the world. Entry to the lobby is free. The adjoining Dufferin Terrace, a wide boardwalk wrapping around the building above the river, is free, open 24 hours, and rated among the most reviewed attractions in the city. If you dine or drink inside the chateau, reservations are recommended. Montmorency Falls sits about 15 minutes by car east of Old Quebec and stands 83 meters or 272 feet tall, which makes it roughly 30 meters taller than Niagara Falls. Pedestrian access to the base is free. The park at Parc de la Chute Montmorency charges $13.50 for adults and $6.75 for children under 13, with children under 6 entering free. A cable car runs to the top, and a suspension bridge spans the crest with views over the St. Lawrence. It does not typically require advance booking, but midday summer crowds are heavy. A morning arrival before 10 a.m. gives you the falls largely to yourself. The Musée de la Civilisation in Lower Town is one of the stronger museum experiences in Canada, with substantive permanent exhibitions covering Quebec culture and Indigenous history alongside rotating shows. Confirm current adult admission on the operator's site as pricing changes with programming. Allow 2 to 3 hours. It is well located in the Lower Town near Place Royale, so it pairs logically with a Petit Champlain afternoon. The Musée National des Beaux-Arts du Québec, positioned within the National Battlefields Park near the Plains of Abraham, focuses on Québécois artists, and collects work you will not encounter in quantity anywhere else. Adult admission is $22, seniors $20, students $13, and visitors under 17 enter free. Wednesday evenings, the museum extends hours to 9 p.m. It is closed Mondays. For families or travelers extending their stay past 2 days, the Aquarium of Quebec sits in the western part of the city and requires a car or taxi. Admission runs approximately $25 to $30 for adults currently. It is a solid half-day for families, but sits well outside the historic core and is not a logical first or second priority for most visitors. The two large shopping malls, Galeries de la Capitale and Laurier Quebec, are practical rather than scenic. Galeries de la Capitale includes an indoor amusement park and a skating rink, which gives it a family use case in winter. Both require transit or a car from the historic core and are not meaningful draws for visitors whose time is limited to 3 days or fewer. Fleur de Lis is a third large commercial mall in the same category. Worth knowing they exist, not worth rerouting a day. Seasonality reshapes the city significantly. The Quebec Winter Carnival, held in February, is one of the largest winter festivals in the world, with ice sculptures, ice canoe races on the St. Lawrence, and outdoor events that the city's architecture is uniquely suited to host. Summer peaks in July with the Festival d'été de Québec anchoring mid-July across multiple stages, including performances on the Plains of Abraham. Festival Québec Jazz en juin fills late June. Juste pour rire Québec, the comedy festival, runs in late July. Each of these events changes the city's energy, crowds, and pricing tier substantially. For advance booking, the Citadel tours and major summer festival events fill quickly. The Chateau Frontenac dining rooms benefit from a reservation at any time of year. Montmorency Falls does not require advance booking, but arriving before midday in summer is a practical crowd management strategy rather than an optional preference. Here is how a single well-constructed day actually flows. Start your morning at Dufferin Terrace by 8:30 a.m. or 9 a.m. The boardwalk is open around the clock, and the light over the St. Lawrence is excellent before the first tour groups arrive. Take in the scale of the Chateau Frontenac from the terrace, then walk the fortification walls toward the Citadel of Quebec for a 10 a.m. guided tour. That tour runs roughly 90 minutes. By mid-afternoon, take the funicular down to Quartier Petit Champlain for the narrow streets and independent boutiques, then continue to the Museum of Civilization for a 2-hour pass through its permanent exhibitions. End the evening back in Upper Town. The Plains of Abraham at Golden Hour requires nothing more than a 10-minute walk from the Citadel, and it closes the day with a scale of open space that the dense walls of the Old City do not offer. Restaurant La Bouche in Upper Town, with strong reviews and a mid-range price level, is a logical dinner stop on your return. For a long weekend, the sequencing works as follows. Day 1 should focus entirely on the walled Upper Town, walk the fortifications, complete the Citadel tour, spend time on Dufferin Terrace, and close the afternoon on the Plains of Abraham. This grounds you in the historical logic of the city before you explore anything else. Day 2 dedicates the morning to Lower Town, covering Quartier Petit Champlain and Place Royale, then shifts to the Museum of Civilization in the afternoon. If energy and light allow, a late afternoon taxi or bus out to Montmorency Falls before sunset is worth the transit effort. The falls take on a different quality in late light than at midday. Day 3 operates as a flex day calibrated to your travel profile. Families add the Aquarium of Quebec. Visitors with an arts focus spend the morning at the Musée National des Beaux-Arts and the afternoon at the Grand Théâtre de Québec. Walkers looking for a less tourist-facing version of the city can explore La Cité Limoillou's residential streets to the northeast, which offer a working-class Quebecois neighborhood rhythm that the old city, by design, cannot replicate. Quebec City's food identity is one of the most coherent in North America. The cuisine is rooted in French-Canadian habitant cooking, slow-braised meats, maple-sweetened everything, salt pork, game, and pastry. That thread runs from the most casual casse-croûte to the most formal dining room in the upper town. You are not in a city that has diluted its culinary character to please an international audience. The flavors here are distinctly local, and that specificity is the whole point. The highest concentration of restaurants sits within the walls of Old Quebec, particularly along Rue Saint-Louis and the streets branching off Place d'Armes toward the Petit Champlain district below. These are also the most tourist-facing blocks, which means volume is high and quality is uneven. The strongest reviews cluster on spots with reservation systems, which is a useful filter. In the lower town, the Petit Champlain area and the streets around the Old Port carry their own concentration of French brasserie-style spots with solid ratings and more breathing room between tables. On the price side, a single inexpensive meal runs around $18, and a street food order comes in near $13. Sit-down meals for two at a mid-range restaurant run around $80. And fine dining for two reaches a similar floor with no firm ceiling. The practical budget anchor for most visitors is the mid-tier. Casual French-Canadian spots where a bowl of soupe aux pois, a main, and a local beer lands comfortably under $50 for two. A local draft runs roughly $8, and coffee sits around $3.83. The signature dishes are worth knowing before you order. Poutine is the obvious starting point, and Quebec City is genuinely the right place to eat it. The authentic version uses fresh cheese, curds, and a brown gravy that are made the same day, not the approximations you find elsewhere. Tourtière is a spiced meat pie that appears on nearly every traditional menu. See, pie goes further. A layered game meat pie of venison, hare, and partridge, slow-baked until the strata merge, and it runs around $22 where you find it. Pudding chômeur is the dessert to know, a Depression-era cake batter poured over a hot maple sauce that self-sauces as it bakes, running around $9. Sugar pie and maple syrup pie both appear on bakery counters across the city for $5 to $7 a slice. Cretins, a cold, spreadable pork pâté spiced with cloves and cinnamon, shows up on almost every traditional breakfast plate for around $3. Breakfast is well covered near the main hotel zones. The lower town has long-running breakfast spots that open around 7 a.m. and run through midday without requiring a reservation. The upper town has options in the same window, though on peak summer weekends, the most reviewed spots fill quickly. None of the serious breakfast spots in this data require reservations, which keeps the morning flexible. For the outdoor food experience, Beavertail's kiosks operate on the Plains of Abraham and along the Dufferin Terrace boardwalk. The pastry runs around $8 and is exactly what it sounds like. Fried whole wheat dough stretched flat, served hot with your choice of topping. It is a practical and genuinely good cold weather snack. The Grand Marché de Quebec functions as the city's main public market, with multiple vendors under one roof covering pastry, produce, charcuterie, and local specialties. Individual stall pricing varies, but the format suits self-catering visitors and those who want to graze rather than sit. For dietary considerations, vegetarian options are rated good across the city, with most traditional menus now carrying at least a couple of non-meat mains. Vegan options are workable, but require more navigation. Halal and kosher availability is limited, and travelers with those requirements should plan ahead rather than assume. Allergen awareness across restaurants is moderate, so direct communication with staff is the reliable approach rather than assuming menus are fully labeled. One practical note that most travel writing skips: tap water is safe to drink throughout the city. Restaurants serve it without filtration, and ice is safe. You do not need to budget for bottled water beyond convenience. If any of these hotels, tours, or experiences caught your attention, I've put links to booking options and more in the description below. Quebec City sits in an interesting position on the North American cost spectrum. It is noticeably more affordable than Toronto or Vancouver, and broadly comparable to Montreal. But the concentration of tourism inside the walled city means prices in that core zone run higher than the surrounding neighborhoods. Knowing which tier fits your travel style matters here. At the budget end, hostels run around $42 a night for a dorm bed. Budget hotel rooms start around $83. Add street food and quick service meals averaging around $13 to $8 per meal, a day pass for transit at $10.25, and a modest activity or two, and a careful traveler can operate in the range of $75 to $95 per day. That number assumes you are cooking some meals, walking more than you are riding, and spending most of your time in the areas where the city's publicly accessible attractions carry no entrance fee. The moderate tier looks meaningfully different. A mid-range hotel in Quebec City runs around $205 per night, which is the single largest line item in any daily budget here. Add 2 sit-down meals for around $80 combined, a few transit rides, or a short taxi trip. Taxis start at $3.45 with a per-kilometer rate of $1.80, and a paid attraction or guided experience, and a moderate day lands somewhere in the $130 to $180 range, exclusive of accommodation. At the comfortable tier, upscale hotels average around $268 per night. Fine dining for one runs around $80. A comfortable day all in with accommodation, 2 solid meals, private transport, and paid experiences comes to roughly $200 to $280 depending on how you pace it. For context, those mid-range and upscale accommodation figures are broadly on par with comparable historic European city destinations, and notably lower than peak season rates in comparable walkable urban destinations in the United States. The exchange rate also works meaningfully in favor of US dollar travelers and most major European currencies at this time, which effectively pulls every tier down by a real margin. One practical note on transport costs. A single transit ride is $3.70, and a day pass at $10.25 makes sense on any day you plan more than 3 separate trips. Taxis and rideshares are metered and reasonable for short hops, but within the compact old city, walking eliminates most of that line item entirely. The honest takeaway is that Quebec City rewards travelers who plan their accommodation deliberately. The room is the budget. Food, transit, and most activities are manageable regardless of tier. Splurge on the stay or save on it, and everything else falls into place around that anchor. Quebec City runs through 4 genuinely distinct seasons, and the one you choose shapes the trip almost as much as the itinerary itself. The city rewards visitors in every season for different reasons, but the trade-offs are real and worth understanding before you book. Summer, running June through August, is the obvious peak. Highs reach 23 to 26 degrees Celsius, or about 73 to 79 degrees Fahrenheit. The plains of Abraham are green, the terraces in Old Quebec fill up, and daylight stretches well into the evening. July is the wettest month on record, averaging 183 millimeters of rain spread across 18 days, so afternoon showers are a realistic expectation. The bigger pressure on summer travel is the festival calendar. The Festival d'été de Québec anchors the first half of July with 11 days of international concerts on multiple stages across the city. It draws enormous crowds and pushes hotel prices to their annual peak. Saint Jean-Baptiste Day around June 24th has a similar effect for a shorter window. Quebec Jazz on Juin runs through late June as well. If you're coming for these events, book accommodation 3 to 6 months out. If you're coming for the city itself, late August is the softest window in peak season. The biggest festivals have passed, temperatures remain comfortable, and crowds thin noticeably. September and October represent the strongest overall value proposition. September averages highs of 20 degrees Celsius or about 69 degrees Fahrenheit, with lows around 11 degrees Celsius, or about 51 degrees Fahrenheit, and it records only 8 precipitation days for the month, the lowest of any month in the calendar. October cools to highs around 14 degrees Celsius or about 57 degrees Fahrenheit, but the fall foliage along the St. Lawrence corridor turns the whole region visually dramatic. Crowds are moderate, hotel rates drop from summer peaks, and the city remains fully operational. The traditional music festival Les Rendezvous Estrade fills early October with participatory performances and workshops. May sits in a similar shoulder position at the other end of the calendar. Highs reach 18 degrees Celsius, or about 64 degrees Fahrenheit, and the city shakes off winter quickly. But May is actually the fourth wettest month, with around 130 millimeters of rain across 15 days. Come prepared for that. Winter deserves honest framing. January and February are severe. January averages a high of only -7 degrees Celsius, or about 19 degrees Fahrenheit, and a low of -16 degrees Celsius, or about 4 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind chills regularly push the apparent temperature far below that. February is marginally warmer, but still brutal. The one major exception is Carnaval de Quebec, the world's largest winter carnival, which runs across 2 weekends spanning late January into mid-February. It is a legitimate reason to visit in winter, but it demands the same advanced planning as summer festivals. Hotels book out months ahead and prices spike accordingly. Outside of Carnival, January and February are genuinely low-traffic months with discounted accommodation and the full force of a northern Quebec winter. November stands out as the least rewarding month on the calendar. Highs average only 4 degrees Celsius, or about 39 degrees Fahrenheit. The city logs just 77 sunshine hours for the entire month, the lowest of the year, and precipitation falls on roughly 18 days. There are no major anchoring events to offset the gray. It functions as a transitional month without the charm of either peak fall or the winter carnival season. If you visit in September or October, which is the most consistently reliable window, pack accordingly. Bring a mid-weight waterproof jacket, a light fleece or wool layer for evenings that drop to 10 degrees Celsius, or about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, or below, and comfortable walking shoes with solid grip, since cobblestone surfaces in Old Quebec get slick when wet. October specifically calls for a warm hat and gloves toward the end of the month. Sunscreen is a low priority, but a compact umbrella is not. The shoulder season here is genuinely mild, but the city sits on the St. Lawrence, and evening winds off the river have a bite that feels colder than the thermometer suggests. A few logistics before you land. U.S. citizens enter Canada visa-free and do not need an ETA. A valid passport works fine, and so does a Nexus card if you have one. Stays up to 180 days are permitted. Border officers routinely ask about accommodation, financial means, and purpose of visit, so have your hotel name ready. If you're carrying the equivalent of $10,000 or more in cash or monetary instruments, declare it. Enforcement is strict, and the consequence for non-declaration is seizure plus penalties. Canada runs on Type A and B plugs at 120 volts, 60 hertz, which is identical to the U.S. standard. American travelers need no adapter. European and UK visitors will need a plug converter and should check whether their devices handle dual voltage. For connectivity, 4G LTE coverage across the city is excellent, and 5G reaches the downtown core. If you want a local SIM, Fido offers a 60 gigabytes plan around $45 per month, available at the airport or retail stores. Public Mobile runs a 30 gigabytes option around $34 per month, but activates online only. For a short visit, an Airalo eSIM with 3 gigabytes of data runs around $10 and activates before you land. No passport is required to buy a physical SIM at carrier stores or major retailers. Tipping is a firm social expectation here, not optional. Restaurants expect 15 to 20% of the pre-tax bill. Bars run $1 to $2 per drink, or 15 to 20% on the full tab. Taxis and rideshare typically get 10 to 15%. Digital payment terminals almost always present preset tip options, so you'll be prompted regardless. Service charges are rarely included in Canadian restaurant bills, so don't assume it's been added. On safety, Quebec City consistently rates as one of the lower-risk cities in North America. Petty crime is low, violent crime is low, and solo female travelers report a high level of comfort walking at night. The main watch-out in tourist-heavy areas like the Old City is standard pickpocketing in crowds. The city's nightlife noise is concentrated in specific districts, mainly along Grande Allée and Rue Saint-Jean, so if your accommodation is outside those corridors, disruption is minimal. Emergency services are reached at 911. If you need English language medical care, Hôpital Jeffrey Hale St. Briges is the designated institution for English health services in the region. Travel insurance here works on a pay-then-claim basis, so keep all receipts. Shopping in the Old City leans heavily towards souvenir goods, some of which are marketed as local but manufactured elsewhere. For genuinely Quebec-made products, look at smaller boutiques and artisan shops rather than the main tourist corridor. Fixed pricing is the norm throughout the city, and haggling is not a local custom. If you plan to visit churches like Notre Dame de Quebec Basilica Cathedral, cover your shoulders and knees as a basic courtesy. The request is posted by signage and generally not enforced, but it's worth being prepared. I hope this gives you a clearer picture of what to expect before and during your visit to Quebec City. Quebec City is a strong match for travelers who want a compact, walkable destination with genuine historical depth, a distinct French-speaking culture, and a well-developed food scene. It rewards people who slow down, cover ground on foot, and find satisfaction in neighborhoods rather than checklist sites. Families, couples, and solo travelers all navigate it comfortably, and the scale of Old Quebec means even a long weekend produces a full itinerary without rushing. The destination is less suited to travelers who prioritize beaches, nightlife, or a wide range of international cuisine. Budget travelers should also calibrate expectations. Accommodation in the historic core runs higher than in comparable Canadian cities, and dining inside the walls reflects premium real estate. Seasonally, May, September, and October offer the most practical combination of reasonable weather and thinner crowds. Summer is peak season in every sense, including pricing and line lengths at the central attractions. Winter is a legitimate draw on its own terms, but cold weather travel here is genuinely cold, and it requires a different kind of preparation. Practically, Old Quebec is walkable enough that a car is unnecessary once you arrive. Plan your neighborhood base carefully, confirm whether your accommodation includes parking if you're driving in, and book popular restaurants in advance during peak months. That's our guide to Quebec City. Everything mentioned is linked in the description below. If you're planning another trip, we've got more guides waiting for you. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks so much for watching.